morning, everyone. As per my wonderful introduction, I'm a software engineer and I have also a major in mathematics. I never had to work through high school, although I did have to make some money at university to supplement my income and do the fun things I wanted to do. In many ways, that makes me fairly privileged, and I made the best of it. I made some pocket money at high school tutoring my friends. It was informal. They liked it. Their parents loved it. I got invited to run computer science tutorials and lab demonstrations at the end of my second year of university, so I did that, doing progressively more and more throughout my university education. I did a couple of internships at the University of Melbourne, and then, because I happened to know some great people who didn't want to do contracting work anymore, they gave their clients to me, and I learned a whole bunch of stuff about running my own business well before I was ready to do so. I started a business called Obsidian Consulting with friends, and I took all the clients that I had had at university along with me, and then I started off Perl Training Australia, as was mentioned, with my partner. Both businesses did bespoke development, and of course the latter, given its name, also did training. Training turned out to be wildly successful, and within a few years, 6 or so, we were able to move to doing mostly training and less bespoke development. But a lot of the stuff I'm going to cover today are skills that I learned all along that way. So I have learned some lessons, and hopefully I can share these, and they will be useful for you too. Above all, running your own business, or indeed working for an employer, is a social endeavour. Whether you're answering the question of why a customer should choose you, or sitting for an interview, you have to be confident. Confidence is absolutely everything. No one will believe you if you don't believe you. If you take away no other lesson from this talk, I want it to be this one. And it's a bit scary. What do you do if you're not confident? Fake it. No one else can tell. If you're not certain that you can do this job really, really well, and then just practice. Think of all the likely questions your client might ask you and come up with answers for them. Think of all the things that could go terribly wrong and come up with strategies to get around them. Generally, we're all kind of in the same boat. Don't compare your insides to someone else's outsides. We all have those days where we question whether or not we belong. Am I an utter imposter? Do other people know how terrible I am and how much I'm just winging this? I've only got this far by pure good luck, we think. And it's true, but it's true of your peers and your managers and your clients as well. Don't let their exterior appearance fool you. They're just as insecure as you are, most of the time. And the great thing is, most people actually want to believe you. They want you to be the expert. They've come to you to ask you this question, not to trip you up, but to get your attention and say, hey, I need your help here. People want you to succeed. They want you to interview well when you're going for an interview. They want to believe that you're competent. So if you appear confident, they will be confident as well. And this leads into what was one of the most amazing lessons for us when we started our businesses. Communication skills trump everything else. Good business is about 90% communication skills and about 10% talent. I'm not sure that you need that much talent. Communication skills trump dedication. If you believe you can do something and you can make it happen, but you don't tell anyone, no one will believe you. No one will know. If you say, hey, look, I knew that who would win at the last election and exactly who would get in, but you're saying it after the fact, no one's going to know that you made that as a prediction. They might just think that you're bragging after the fact and making it up. So blow your own horn. Lots Lots of people will tell you not to. I'm not telling you to be arrogant. But if you are utterly invaluable to your team and you work miracles 20 hours a day, but no one knows, you won't get a raise. You won't get new clients. People will assume that you're only working as hard as they are. So if your output is better than theirs, they'll think that your work is easier. We ran into this time and time again. When we didn't communicate with our clients as to what we were up to, they assumed that we weren't working. Same happens with managers. If you don't tell your manager what you've been doing, they will assume that you haven't been doing anything. You need to give everyone frequent updates. And keep in mind that your clients can't tell if you write good code. They can only tell two things. One, does the product actually work? While you're in the progress of getting there, they can't even tell that. Two, how well are you keeping them up to date on the progress made? They can tell if you're writing good emails. They can't tell if you're writing good code. They have no idea if you've written a test suite. Hopefully you're writing test suites. It's absolutely essential that you tell your clients, your managers, your colleagues what you're up to. Even when you're working for people who do have the skills to judge your competency, they're probably not going to take the time to look at your code. Most of the time, they're going to want to look at what you're telling them. Look at your emails, look at your communication. So good communication is a superpower. Of course, sooner or later, if you don't ever complete your projects, your clients and colleagues will notice, eventually. So you should probably be careful to take on projects that you can actually do. Learn on your own time, not on your customers' payments. Now, on this one, I think that honesty is essential, but I must admit I worked for a business where the boss frequently lied to our other office, lied to his clients, lied even to the employees. And lots of the time the lies made no sense. Like, surely the clients would care to know what constraints we were working under. Surely it benefited the other office to have an idea of the priority of the task that they've asked us. It didn't hurt the business during the time I worked there, but I'm pretty sure it's going to bite them soon. So when you're asked for estimates, give honest estimates. At the start, you're going to really find estimating hard. Just like with every agile project, working out how much output you can do every time. With life, things that curveballs get thrown in your path, keep getting a good idea of that over time makes it easier. As an example, as another honesty thing, not just in estimates, I once had a client, it was a law firm in Melbourne. They contacted us and said, hey, we've got some Perl code. We'd like to have some training in Perl so that we can improve that code. Like law firms writing Perl. Okay. I turned up, I looked at their Perl code, and their Perl code was just the standard libraries. That is, they had no Perl code. I said, what do you do to run the system that you're having these difficulties with? And they pointed at me at the PHP directory. Like, you have PHP code. Learning Perl will not help you. I mean, I probably could have got a lot of money teaching some of them Perl, but it wouldn't have helped them. So I said, learning PHP, totally not something I can do for you. But what are you trying to achieve here? Do you want to learn PHP or do you just want the system fixed? And they're like, we want it fixed. And I'm like, I've got a whole bunch of, I could do it, because they asked me, can you do it? I'm like, well, I could, but I'm not a PHP expert. I'm okay, but I'm not an expert. I've got lots of people I can recommend who are experts. Please let me give their your details to them. And they're like, oh, no, you're really honest. We like you best. Can you do it for us anyway? I'm like, I'll be slower and it might not be as good. And they're like, we want you instead. They become a really good client. They paid their bills on time and they paid quite generously. They didn't invite me to their Christmas party though. That was very sad. Clients want to trust you, so give them a reason to believe that they can. If you lose that trust because they catch you out in a lie, it's so hard to get it back again. Possibly impossible. Track your productivity. This comes back to what I said. If you're doing, if your output varies because, sometimes your mum wants to come and hang out with you rather than letting you work that day, If you're working from home, people think that it's cool just to drop in. You need to sort of have an idea of how much work you can do in a great week, in a middle week, and how many story points that are in an agile sense, and then say, okay, I can get this much done each week. Once you know what's possible, you can do this. That allows you to estimate better. This is how you build a reputation. You show that you're confident. You talk to your clients. You send them emails. You keep everyone up to date, or your manager and your colleagues. And of course, you're honest. Of course, if you're competent as well, that makes you awesome. Earning a reputation with each client, or to reach out to get new clients individually, is really slow. So sometimes you want to get clients in a faster sense. There's all sorts of advertising you can do. For tiny businesses, they have less value a lot of the time. But there is a really great shortcut to getting in front of people and building your reputation quickly. And it's this easy. Speak at conferences. Your conference organisers will love you too. It's an ultimate test of confidence, competence, honesty, and communication skills. Your peers will love you. You'll get to learn new stuff. You'll get to teach other people the stuff you've learned. And if you ever need to job hunt, having an international or national reputation as a great speaker is a great way of having people actually go and headhunt you, rather than you having to find them. If conferences are daunting, start at the smaller things. There will be a bunch in your local area. Go and give talks if they accept talks, or just hang out and do the social thing if that's what happens there. It's good practice, it's good for your local community, and it's a great way to meet new prospective clients. I recommend networking in industry events. There's usually a handful of them. They're not necessarily directly relevant to what you do, like if you're a Python programmer, there might not just be a Python networking event. Of course, there's a Python conference, you could go to that. But there might be things like women in IT, if you're a woman, or X in whatever, fora. Meet people, talk to people, make friends. Fake good social skills if you don't have them. Because you need to learn how to do small talk as well, particularly if you're running a business. If you can't keep up a pleasant and entertaining conversation for at least 30 minutes with someone that you otherwise could not care less about, you're not actually going to make a lot of great clients. Your client's partner, your manager's friend, your colleague's teenager, all of these are people that you're going to encounter at some point or another, and you're going to need to be able to make pleasant conversation with them for a while. Whether or not you're running your own business, if you're employed by someone else. This one, super important. And I hate small talk, but it's a great way of showing that you have good social skills. And honestly, you just ask them a bunch of questions. Let them do most of the talking. If they can do 70% or more of the talking, they're going to think that you rock. Now, this one's a weird one, right? Like, you've probably all been online since you were 10 or possibly younger. Why do you need to learn to write emails? But your success is going to be determined by how well you can communicate. And most of that communication with clients is going to be done over email. And most email is written really badly. On average, only in about 5 in every 100 words is important. So you're going to need to find out what those 5 words are. And your clients are going to write terrible emails because no one has taught them any better either. So it's up to you to work out how to elicit requirements out of what can get to be quite heated conversations. If another team is saying to you, no, you can't do it that way, you have to do it our way, and you're pretty sure that the reasons they're giving you are wrong. For example, they say, oh no, you can't code it in Python because Python doesn't work on this machine, and you know that Python works on that machine. Then you need to find out what it is that they're actually objecting to. Whether this is face-to-face or via email, it really helps if you've learned to write your ideas in a nice and succinct, to-the-point fashion. And of course, you're going to need to learn when the next correct reply to an email is actually a phone call. When I was a teenager, I don't know if this is true for you, I used to spend hours talking to my friends who I would see tomorrow on the phone. My dad was always like, every conversation you have on the phone should only be 10 minutes because you could say everything you need in 10 minutes in a conversation on the phone. And I was like, yes, but I still want to talk to my friends. Running a business actually discouraged me from ever wanting to talk on the phone again. Clients rarely have their thoughts together, and you can end up waiting patiently for them to go back and forth on an idea 5 or 6 times, and then say, oh, well, actually, I should discuss it with someone else first before I give you a decision. However, there is something magic about phone calls. You can call someone up and you can say exactly the same words that you just sent them an email, and they said, I don't understand. And you say exactly the same words to them, and they're like, oh, I get it now. Because clients aren't very good at reading emails either. So sometimes the correct solution is actually just to make a phone call. Always ask questions. Being confident does not mean pretending you know everything. Your customers will write confusing things. People will put things that disagree with each other in contracts, as well as in emails, as in specs. You'll have user stories that conflict. Ask questions. Nut out why those things disagree with each other. And of course, learn how to say no. It sounds kind of easy, it's just like, no. Except that it isn't, because customers are like, hey, can you do this extra thing? Or I want to build the most amazing thing, but I just want you to figure it all out without giving you a spec. Sometimes you'll be asked to work for free. If you're cool with working for free, work for free. A lot of the time when you're asked to work for free, it's not obvious that you're being asked to work for free. Like a client's like, that's really great, I'm really happy with the system. Hey, I think this thing is just a little small change. Would you be able to completely rewrite it in JavaScript? Remember that you can say no. Don't agree to do projects that you can't do. Unless, of course, you can pay someone else to do them for you. And that works. And all of that social stuff, that's the most important bit of my entire talk. Communication will make up for a whole lot of faults. But money kind of matters as well. If you haven't done one, do a basic accounting course. I'm not talking like a 3-year degree, of course. There's a really good chance that your student union offers short courses. Find one that's like 10 weeks long or so and just a few hours a week, and learn how to do basic accounting. You need to know how to track where your money comes from and where it goes, especially if you're going to run a small business, but even in general, there's a lot of stuff that you think you know that you don't. At least with the people I've spoken to, basic financial skills are still not taught at high school or university unless you go out and look for them. And that's terrible. Also, if you're going to start a business, do a basic business skills. You can do a Cert 4 if you like. There's a lot of advantages in doing so, but even just a basic one which teaches you the kinds of things that you might want to know, or even hints at the things that you will need to know. I didn't do this. None of us did this. We threw ourselves in and like, we're totally capable of working this out. I don't think we even went and read the man page. We're just like, we're going to start a business. So we started a business. The accountant did the hard stuff and we did all the rest. Except all the rest included marketing, and I don't know how to market. So I sent emails to mailing lists, and back when we had mailing lists, that was great. I have no idea how you'd start now. Maybe create a Facebook page or something. Reaching out to people, getting them to find that you exist and come along to your training courses or employ you to do their little projects on the side or whatever. That's hard work. A basic business skills course should give you some ways to get into there. Invoices, you're not going to run very long if you can't write invoices. It's not hard, it'll be part of that business course. And this is a hard one. You're about to start, well, soon I imagine, a new career. And you're about to go, hey, I'm going to learn all the things I'm going to get income. Some of you might be living off New Start or whatever it is for students, and you're not getting a lot of money. You've had to put money aside in order to spend full-time learning stuff, and that's awesome. But now, you're going to go and get a job, and you're going to get, say, $50,000 a year, and that's a lot more money. If you can maintain your current standard of living for a little while longer, you can make a whole bunch of savings. Maybe upgrade your car from an ancient version to a slightly less ancient version. Maybe move out of your share house with students to a share house with young professionals. But if you can generally constrain your desire to spend big, it'll make your life easier, and I'm about to tell you why. So if you save that money and you invest it, and I'm not necessarily saying stocks and stuff, it gives you freedom, immense freedom, because starting a business costs money. First you need to find a client, then you need to do the work for them, then you need to invoice them, then they need to get around to paying you. You're going to need at least 6 months of living costs in order to be able to start that business. Moving house, possibly to another city, even another country, that costs money. Buying property in shares, if you want traditional investments, they cost money. Redundancies can be expensive if you don't have another job to jump to. Fleeing a bad job because your manager or colleagues are difficult to work with costs money. Having a team who every winter just totally do this because it's awesome, go skiing, means that you get left out if you don't have the money to afford that. So there are perks to just having a decent little bit of savings there. Conferences are awesome, but they cost money. And basically, all of the awesome stuff, all the opportunities that will be open to you are made just that bit easier if you've saved a chunk of money. So see what you can do there. A boring one, goodness me, I hate budgets. But if you're going to run a business or anything else, it's good and a good idea to know how much money you're dealing with. If you want a budget to spend 80% of your income, do it. Just don't accidentally spend 130% every fortnight and then see where you end up. And we did this. I mean, you kind of do. You're like, okay, we're going to start a business. We've got some savings. No one told us we should probably save 6 months worth first. So I finished uni and went straight into starting these businesses, and my partner, he left his job because it would be great, right? We'd also just bought a house. Budgeting would have been great. Wish we had done it a bit sooner. That could be worse. You're probably thinking, I'm way young, I don't need to worry too much about superannuation. Retirement is years away. Compounding interest is cool, not what I'm going to talk about. It's easier when you're running your business to not think about super that much, but just think a little bit about these numbers here. Hopefully, within a few years, you'll earn more than that 50,000 figure I gave you. So it won't just be a flat 50,000 for 50 years straight. But if you can add your pre-tax salary sacrifice numbers in there, the numbers end up bigger, as you would expect, but the result is awesome. So we're only talking in this scenario of saving, for the purposes of super, $115 to $150 a week, which at the moment is a lot of money. But once you're earning $50,000, $60,000, $100,000, it's a lot less money. I kind of recommend making your salary sacrifice number plus the employer contribution equal to about 20 to 25%. Remembering that the employer contribution is actually on top of your salary. Of course, your progression might look something more like this, and the result is way more comfort. There's calculators and stuff, you can work this one out. I'm just going to remind you, it's probably something worth thinking about. There are industry funds, they're pretty cool, choose your own. This one really surprised me. I actually went to speak to a financial professional just recently. I said, hey, I've got some money, I should think about this. And he said, what do you do about insurance? And I'm like, I have house insurance and car insurance. And he said, yes, but what about personal insurance? I'm like, I don't have any dependents, so it never was relevant to me. And he goes, okay, so you insure your car? Yes. And how much is your car worth? About $7,000. Okay, and how much have you insured it for? About that. And he goes, okay. So you have car insurance for a $7,000 vehicle. How much money do you think you'll make over your lifetime? And I'm like, over $1 million? Probably more like 8 or 10 or something. And he goes, okay, so you've got $10 million in future potential earnings. Have you insured it? I'm like, no. And he said, you should probably look at income insurance. So I thought I should look at income insurance. I'm just going to say you should have a look at what your insurance options are too. Try to stay healthy, because of course there's health insurance as well. It's really hard to run a business if you're sick. You don't get sick days paid by somebody else. That one's kind of an obvious one. It's actually kind of fun when you drag yourself out of bed and you've got a high fever and you try to write an address on an envelope and then you realize that you're too sick to go post it anyway. And then the next day you come back and you discover that your handwriting when you're running a 40-degree fever is not legible. The postie probably couldn't help. Although maybe if they can read doctor's handwriting, you'd be fine. Even if you're employed full-time, try to stay healthy. It's a lot more fun that way. Choose your own addictions. Addictions are great. I'm not going to demonize any of these. These are all great products, I'm sure. Consume the things you want to consume. Just make sure you choose your addiction. Don't just drink 3 coffees every day because you've always drunk 3 coffees every day. Or 2 litres of Coke every time you go and play a role-playing game because you always do that. Don't just do it because you have. Make sure it's a choice. Do you want to have this addiction? Because kicking a 2 litres a day or even 1 litre a day Coke addiction 15 years later is way harder than kicking it 2 years after you started it. Even if it's Diet Coke. Just kicking those things, getting past your sugar addiction and your caffeine addiction, or whatever it is harder. So once you've chosen your addictions, just think about them again every now and then. This will probably make you a lot nicer person to be around when you do decide to change your addictions. This one's kind of obvious, but if you know what your base level health is, and then it changes, your doctor will be able to be more helpful for you. And honestly, this is a bad one. This one upsets me. I mean, seeing a good dentist is awesome. But people discriminate heavily against people without great dentistry. And that bit upsets me. But it's true. If you don't have reasonably good teeth, your clients are probably going to assume that you're less good than you are, even though you're probably great. I don't know why, it just is. So you probably want to make sure that you have a friendly relationship with your dentist. Plus, having poor teeth can actually cause you lots of health issues, and that would be bad. This one's a big one. Whatever you do, whether you're working for an employer or running your own business, there will be times when you're incredibly stressed. Thumping your clients or shaking them or any of the things that your body might be telling you to do as a response to your stress is never okay. And sometimes it's better to just take a few deep breaths, clench your fists, leave the meeting, have a toilet break and just go, argh! But there will be times that you're incredibly stressed, and stress is difficult. Stress affects all parts of your life. It affects how much sleep you can get and how good that sleep is. It can affect your diet and how willing you are to eat and what foods you crave. It can affect your relationships. Try to work out what kind of things make you really stressed and what kind of things make you less stressed. If you can balance the two, you'll be a much more pleasant person to be around, and that will actually improve your reputation markedly. Most importantly, this is a really important one. In high school, you were probably told, pick your subjects really carefully because they determine the rest of your life. Then you're told, Pick a degree at university, but be really careful about it, because it's going to determine the rest of your life. Maybe at university you were probably told, hey, pick your major. And it's kind of important because it's at least going to determine the rest of your degree. And it's not true, actually. Most of that wasn't as life-defining as we were told it was. It's also, all of that is far behind you now. Short of terminal issues or harming other people, almost everything you choose to do from now on is reversible. You're free. Make mistakes. Live, love, throw yourself at stuff. Make business mistakes and money mistakes and relationship mistakes. Ignore all of this advice and then come back and redo some of it. So long as you take care of your mind and your body and you're not assaulting other people or generally causing harm, make mistakes. Mistakes are how you will learn to succeed. Of course, if you tell your clients what you think of them at certain moments when that would be unwise, that can be a little bit hard to come back from. We actually had one client who called us up. We were on a scuba diving holiday. They had actually, although our ex-client, they had decided that another person was much cheaper. We were offering them system administration services, and every time we had worked with them, we had said we would really like to develop a disaster recovery plan, but their usual time that they would bring us on board was like, everything's on fire, help us. And we'd be like, right, okay, put the fires out, build them for some time, make the network and everything just a little bit safer, and then that would be the end of like that little bracket of time that they had employed us for. We even got to a point where we were giving them a day a week, but every single week we were putting out fires and only incrementally, slightly improving things. And they're like, hey guys, it's been a great relationship, but we're going to hire this other person to do it instead. And we're like, okay, well, we would like to do a handover. We will even do it for free. We just need you to give us 2 days of their time so that we can give them all the plans that we put together for the disaster management and how far we got along those plans and you know, get them to help us out. And they're like, yeah, sure, whenever. We couldn't get the new person to help us, and we couldn't get them to, we couldn't make it happen, basically. We put aside several blocks of time, and those times just whisked past in the calendar. So clearly it wasn't a high priority. Then we went scuba diving, and it was awesome for about 5 minutes. While we're under the water, having a great swim and everything, our client was phoning us frantically, not that we could tell. We got back, and we were down at Portsea, just right down the edge of one of the arms of the bay around Melbourne. And the client called us up and said, hey, we saw we had a missed message, but we didn't have a lot of reception. So we climbed up a hill and we're like, hey, what's up? And they're like, it's all going to hell and we're losing like $100,000 an hour and help us. And we're like, kind of in Portsea right now. We even sent you an email saying, hey, we're going to be in Portsea for the long weekend. Hard to contact. And they're like, yes, but it's on fire right now. And we're like, do we go back to Melbourne? I suppose we go back to Melbourne. So we cancelled the rest of our dives because we were wonderful people, I guess. Headed back to Coburg, where I live. And after a little while of trying to fix things, we realized we needed to actually be on site. And it was, I think, Good Friday. So you can imagine that had some interesting transport challenges, but our client sent his wife over, oddly enough, to pick us up, took us back on site. We put out some of the fires, all the things that we had planned in our handover to say you need to watch this and this and this, instituted a little bit more disaster management, incremental fixes. It was like 1 a.m. at this point, so we got a lift back home. And then that night at about 4 a.m., got another phone call to the landline at this particular point. And in my dream, we were scuba diving and the phone was ringing and I was trying to swim to the surface, but you can't go up really, really fast because when scuba diving, because it's really bad and you get the bends. So I'm trying to ascend safely but get to the phone before it stops ringing. And then it stops ringing, which is fine because my husband had got up and gone and answered it. And the client's wife came back and picked us up and took us to the site. And we did some more stuff. And that lasted until like 7 p.m. And then she drove us all the way to Blairgowrie, which is like halfway to Portsea, which is where our accommodation was. And then presumably drove all the way back to Melbourne. And it was a very, very long weekend, but we got to do the rest of our diving, which was wonderful. But, oh, wake up. But yes, make mistakes. Mistakes are awesome. But sometimes your clients' mistakes will burn you hotter. And most importantly, I'm finishing a little sooner than I intended, but stay awesome. Do the things that you love and do them with confidence because you can be awesome people. Thank you. It does seem that I probably have time for questions. If you want to yell out your question, I'll repeat it back for any video that might need it, if there are any questions. Otherwise, I might just, yes?
How much did you charge that client for making you come back from your superannuation holiday?
Oh, wow. So at that time, our hourly rate for them was about $95 an hour, and we charged them double time plus an extra $1,000 for the cancellation of the weekend. And given that that was quite a lot of hours that we ended up working for them, that actually paid for the weekend plus another one in the future. One thing I didn't mention, actually, I just realized is missing from my talk, was how do you work out what your hourly rate should be? And this is probably one that you actually care a lot about if you ever think of doing this yourself. So here's an idea. Find out what you might be worth in a hourly rate, or if you could get a job with, I don't know, IBM, for example. Pick a company here, it doesn't matter. How much would they probably pay you? Let's say that $50,000 figure I had before. But later in life it might be 80 or 120,000, whatever the number is. Take that number and then double it. Well, we'll go back one step. $50,000 in a year, ignoring tax and everything, because everything ignores tax and everything, is 2,000 hours of work, roughly. It's pretty close if you do 52 times minus 4 for some weeks of leave, divided by 40 hours a week. It's about 2,000 hours of work. So your hourly rate in a $50,000 job is $25 an hour. It's a really easy metric to go with. Now, obviously, you don't want to charge $25 an hour. You're not going to get paid for sick leave. You're not going to get paid for annual leave. You're not going to get paid for meetings that end up in work that doesn't ever pay you money. You're not going to be paid for invoicing or chasing invoices and payments from clients. So you need to account for all of that work that you don't get paid for. So what you do is you then take that number and you triple it. So you take your $25 an hour and you say, okay, the minimum I can afford to work for is $75 an hour. Now later, maybe if you've got a really good long-term client who just pays you bills regularly and gives you a fixed amount of work every week, as I had for a while with that legal firm, maybe you can give them a discount, particularly once your rate would otherwise move up with your experience. So maybe you might want to only charge them 2.5 times what would be your base rate. If you pay attention to what people who, there are businesses who employ you and then send you around as consultants to many other businesses. And there's all sorts of industry jargon words to describe that. We'll just go with this for the moment. If they're doing that, they're not going to be selling you at 3 times your hourly rate. They're going to be selling you at close to 6 or 7. So even if you're working for them, keep that in mind. If you are charging one of these businesses $75 an hour to sell you to other clients, they're probably selling you at $150 an hour. So remember that ultimately the client down the end is actually going to cope with this unless the business is really small. Don't feel embarrassed by your hourly rate. There's a very good chance that unless you're being ridiculous, you're going to be able to find customers who'll pay that amount. Once you start getting to sort of lawyer level rates of $500 an hour though, then it does get a bit harder. I've never successfully charged that much. I have, even after this particularly unusual experience, successfully managed to sell my rates at $220,000, sorry, $220 per hour without too many difficulties. If you've got the experience and the reputation, it goes a long way. Any other questions? Yes? When do you fire clients? We had to fire several clients along the way, and when I later worked out in industry, I had to fire my boss. Eventually it has to happen. I mean, obviously not every single time, but there are definitely clients that are too much work. The strategy I use, I'll come back to the when deciding in just a moment. The strategy I've always used is to find someone else I know who is a little bit more desperate for work than I am and say, hey, I'm done with this client. Here are the things I'm frustrated about with them, but I would like to recommend that they use you instead. And usually your colleague in we have worked together kind of sense, not necessarily we are currently working together, we'll say, if they're a little bit more desperate for work, they'll be like, yes, please give me another client. When do you decide? Well, honestly, it's up to what your tolerance is. If you're leaving every meeting with them just going, or every time you finished a phone call with them, you just want to explode, they're probably not doing any good for you. When we moved from doing mostly bespoke stuff to doing mostly training, at that point, we looked at our budgets and stuff, and we discovered that 80% of our money was coming from training. But training was only 20% of the hours we were spending. It was pretty close. These numbers are slightly rounded, of course. But that meant we were spending 80% of our time working and invoicing and generally other stuff for clients who weren't overall making us a lot of money. And we very happily went, hey clients, meet this friend over here, who got to set their own rates because they didn't have an existing relationship. And we ran away screaming, and it was the best thing we ever did. And then we were able, finally, because actually when we started this, we didn't want to work 40-hour weeks. We didn't want to work 60-hour weeks either, but that's what we ended up doing for the first 2 or 3 years. Then after we sort of pared that back, and we went, okay, well, what would be good? Good would be, except for the weeks of training, which is 40 hours, of course, when we aren't training every week, those weeks that we aren't training, it would be nice if we only work 25 to 30 hours a week. Now, we could have, because we had capacity, we could have taken on more bespoke work, but we had just shed all that. So we just luxuriated in the fact that other than generally being around to answer the phone, we could work on open source projects and run conferences. I started up the conference, Open Source Developers Conference, for anyone who's been there, because we suddenly had the freedom and the time to do that kind of thing. I ran user groups. There are so many things you can do if you've got breathing room. And we even took on a new staff member for a while. Taking on a staff member is hellish expensive. I'm not even talking about salary. You can't take on someone when you're at 100% capacity because you don't have any time to spend to train them. Of course, you don't want someone when you're only at 60% capacity because you don't need them yet. So taking on a new employee is actually a really big juggling match. And that in itself causes its own challenges. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much. I will be around, and I would love to tell you all more stories, so ask. Thank you very much.